All right. Well, for those of you that are somewhat maybe new to our procedures, we do have the Spanish section. In fact, I think the Hartford Church, some of them are meeting in the sanctuary to hear this tonight. And Sonia, who in the purple sweater there, graciously agreed to translate for us. So she's taking a running account of what we are saying. This would be Martine's wife, and she is translating it for those who are on the Spanish side. So we want to thank her. I want to thank Carlos for being our engineer and taking care of all the difficulties. So if you have any issues, call him, don't call me. And he'll be able to help you. So we appreciate that so much. I want to thank the presenters tonight, Carlos, whom we will introduce here shortly, and Reggie, who prayed for us, Doug Conley, who has been a longtime pastor in the missionary church and was at Sterling Heights, in the Sterling Heights area, and Davison, and then at Evergreen here just outside of Grand Rapids. And these are seasoned pastors and have demonstrated leadership and led good congregations. So we just thank the Lord for them. All right, so we want to go ahead and get started. Let me just tell you a little bit how this got about. I've long believed that delegation has been one of those missing tools that many pastors don't use as well as they could. It's not that we don't use it at all, but we don't use it as well as we could. And I remember one time my father said to me, now my father was not a pastor, though he was deeply committed to the church. He and mom, they were always spending time at the church and involved. And if there's a furnace to put in or something to build, my dad was there. But I remember one time my dad saying to me, and I was pastoring at the time, he said, Bill, if the pastor would only tell us what he wants us to do, we would gladly do it. Which is basically saying, if the pastor would only delegate to us, we would gladly pick up and run with it. So that always made an impression for me, because here was a lady that was saying that. Now, and Moses was a pastor who carried the people close to his heart. He was doing the best he could. And I'm always impressed with the story in Exodus 18, when his father-in-law Jethro came to him and observed what he was doing and had the audacity to say to him, Jethro, or Moses, what you're doing is not good. Now, I want to give a lot of credit to Moses. Here was a man who was leading over 2 million people, and he was willing to take advice. He was willing to listen to somebody. He could have said, look, Dad, you're from the backside of the desert. What do you know about this? But instead, he said, he listened and he accepted it, and he followed through with what his father-in-law suggested. And he said, if you will do this, what I suggest, you can stand the strain and the people will go home satisfied. Well, that's always impressed me. And you can read about it in Exodus 18, and probably some of our presenters tonight will talk about it. Well, so how did this meeting come this time? Well, we've been doing these Christian Leadership Academy classes. We try to do about 3 a year, so that we can help to strengthen the leadership of our network through their pastors or even through the whole churches. So Carlos and I were talking about delegation, the subject. And so finally I just said, well, Carlos, why don't you do the section on why we don't delegate? And so he agreed to do that. And then I called Reggie, and I also called Doug. So they're going to help us tonight, and I'll fill in some of the pieces in between. So anyway, and let me just say, I wish we had time to go around and introduce everybody to everybody. I just think that'll use up too much of our time. I'd love to do that because I'm sure that not everybody knows everybody. that's on the call. But anyway, so we're going to start with the whole subject of why we don't delegate. And I think there are a number of reasons. So Carlos, we're going to let you start. And Carlos does, we've done enough Zoom now to know that if there's background noise in somebody else's mic, you don't have that ability to siphon out unwanted sounds. It just takes away everything. So Carlos does have the ability to cancel or to mute your mic. He does not have the ability to turn it back on, I don't think. I think you will have to do that if you want to speak. So, okay, Carlos, let's start with you and talk to us about in your...
You're mute, Pastor.
I'm sorry, I muted myself too fast. We'll have some questions and answers after he gets done, and we'll open the mics a little bit. I do want to we have enough time for the presenters tonight. So go ahead, let's start with you, Carlos.
Right. Thank you, Pastor Bill. Well, the point I'm going to share to you tonight is about why don't we delegate more? And that's the question, right? Why we don't delegate more? We should be delegating. I think we are called to do it. But just to make it quick, I want to share to you 4 points of why I think that we don't delegate more. So there is some thoughts that most of the times we adapt, we make it ourselves, and we believe, and it became ours, like or thoughts or ways to see this topic of delegation, and that prevents us to delegate more. But one of the other reasons of why our leaderships got stuck or ministry got stuck is for lack of delegate. At the beginning of our leaderships, we start to see a growth. We start, let's say, a church plant, or let's start a ministry, or some sort of ministry, and we start ourselves, and we start developing more growth and people, and getting to get to more people and stuff like that. But there is a time where if we don't delegate, we will get stuck, and we can continue for the years, and the years will pass and pass, and we will not see any growth because we stop delegating more stuff or more roles to other people. So let me show you 4 points that what I think we don't delegate more. And those points I want to share are related to me, maybe, that I was thinking why I don't delegate, so I can share to you why maybe we don't delegate. So I think the first one that I want to show to you is fear. We don't delegate because we can have fear. Fear to delegate or work to somebody else will make us fear, like what? Like we can lose control of it. We like to have the control, we like to see the things working good. We like to see the things working as supposed to, as I like it to work, I like it to happen. And giving this job or this task to somebody else, it might be get me into fear that I don't know if this job is going to be done. I don't know if it's going to make it well. I don't know if this is going to make it. I like it to be done. So we are fear of lose control. And here is where most of the times our ministries won't grow, because we don't want to lose control. We want to have the control of everything. But we should delegate and trust and be patient with the other person, knowing that he or she will learn and grow, and also even do it better, And also we can get fear of not get the job done or well as I could do it, right? And this is right. Sometimes the job will not be done or it will be done well as I want it to happen, but we need to start. Remember how do you start at the beginning doing the task you're doing now? I remember myself. Sometimes I don't do it right. When I was little and my dad was telling me how to do things, he always told me, okay, start like this. And I started too fast, and I was starting to do it too much, like tiny balls for a table or something, and then I went too much, and boom, I snapped the ball, you know. So I had to start over, and then I had to start doing things again. And now that I see my kids myself, I can relate myself when I was a kid, you know, having my kids doing some stuff and then not doing it right. Sometimes my passion is gone, you know. I want like, hey, do it now. I mean, you should do it now. How you see me doing a lot of times or not, you know, you should be doing by now. So we don't like to lose the control. Sometimes we want to do the things fast, you know, and make it well because we're running out of time, or we are just not trusting in somebody else to do this job I supposed to do and delegate it to somebody else. So we lose control. And also we can be fear of not get to the person that we delegate. We are fear that they will do it better, that I could do it, you know. What about if he does better than I? Then I won't be the one doing it, you know. What about if this person gets, you know, the job even better and faster on a different way, you know. Sometimes we don't like that, but praise God for that if that happened, you know. This should be our motivation to delegate so people can do it better and can be a growth path for them and for our ministry. We should be praising God to giving the opportunity to others to grow in their ministries with the gifts that the Holy Spirit have given to every person in our team. You know, we are compared as a body, you know, that the body with many members, that every single part of our body will do different things. And when we delegate, then we are living like that. We are living as a body of many members, creating only one body, and you know, having God as our head, or Jesus as our head. This thought about don't delegate because somebody will do it better. I think this thought is an envious thought, you know, that we were created with different gifts for the same work of ministry, so we can work in unity. So having this thought is just be something like be pride, you know, or be like envious thoughts, that we should get it out of our minds, and we should delegate a little more. Or I should delegate a little more, I would say, because I told you at the beginning I was looking of myself in this. Point number 2 of why don't we delegate more, what I think is because we don't know how to delegate. You know, I got my attention this week talking about this and talking to myself and with my wife, you know, and she said to me, you know, maybe you don't know how to delegate because normally you are used to being asked for help, but you are not used to ask for help, you know. Normally the people will come, she say, well, normally the people will come to you and I will ask you for help, and you will help them, you know. You will find out how to help, you find a way to help. If you don't know how to do things, you will learn the things to do it so you can be able to help, but normally you are the one providing help. But you are not used to asking for help because why? I don't know, because I think about myself, you know, again, pride, envy, you know, be envious. I don't know what is that, but if you are used to being asked for help, I think you should like to be see the same, right? Like if people's asking me for help, why I should ask for help? I should be the one giving help, not asking for help. But this is a thought that we should take out of our minds too, and get to know how to delegate. We need to be open-minded and delegate more and trust. Other reason why I think we don't delegate more is because laziness. We don't want to waste the time. We want the things done and soon, and we don't want to spend time with others. Delegate for me is spending time teaching the person so that they learn the job until they are able to do it in their own, you know. So that means I need to spend time with this person, teaching them, showing them how to do the job, you know. And doing this, for I think they will produce patience, you know. And in fact, patience is one of the fruits of the Holy Spirit that we should have. So if we don't delegate and we start doing this, spending time with the people, I think patience is gonna be a fruit that's gonna come out. It should be come out in our lives, in our spiritual lives, because we should learn, and we should be learn patience and delegate more, and trust and that the job will be done good. Point number 4, that why I think we should delegate more, or why we don't delegate more, is because we think that delegate is not doing my job. Like my job is not to delegate. My job is to get the things done. But my job is to delegate. And I think Jesus delegate us, like, and Jesus delegate us to do things, and we should delegate others. Pastor Bill was using the scripture from Exodus chapter 18, and we see Jethro talking to Moses, that uh, giving a lot of advices. You should teach others. You should find people. You should do this and do that, and teach it to others. And it's pretty much what Jesus told us to do, teaching others. And also, we know this passage very well of Matthew 28, where it says, "Go therefore and make disciples of all of nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit." And number 20 says, "Teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you." And this part where teaching them is where we should start delegating more other people in our ministries and in our lives, and even in our houses and wherever we are. We should be delegating more, and taking all these 4 points of what we don't delegate. I think for me, this is the main reason why we don't delegate more. So just to resume everything, number 1 is because fear. Number 2 is because we don't know how to delegate. Number 3, because we become lazy, or we have laziness that we don't want to waste our time teaching others, and we think that delegate is not my job, but in fact, that's my job to delegate.
Okay, Carlos, thank you. All right, I'm going to open up for about 5 minutes, then we'll go to Reggie. What are there some other things that you think about when you think, or you want to respond to maybe something that Carlos has said, why we don't delegate? You'll have to unmute yourself. While you're doing that, one of the things that I think about is I used to procrastinate too late to ask somebody to do something, and then I was embarrassed to ask them. So I ended up doing it myself, and wasn't good. I knew that, I just didn't plan far enough ahead. Why else don't we delegate?
I think sometimes it can be just afraid of them saying no, and we don't want to hear the word no, so just do it ourselves. We won't hear no. I think that can be an issue.
I agree with you. I think that can be a very scary thing. What did Wayne Gretzky say? You never make a shot you don't shoot, or something like that. For Hispanics that don't follow NHL hockey, he was a great hockey player. Anybody else want to just chime in? And I think
Maybe
sometimes, go ahead.
Oh, I think because sometimes we don't know the person, and we feel like fair to ask for help, maybe
Okay.
because we don't know that person, and then sometimes we feel fair to ask, like, "Oh, can you help me with this?" And then maybe we think, like, "Oh, maybe she said no, and it's better to do by myself."
Sure.
Yeah.
And Carlos, I thought your point was well taken, that we clergy are doers. And when you said that your wife said to you, Ruth said to you, well, you're always wanting to do for somebody else and you're not asking them to do for you. I think that's a point that we need to make note of. Sometimes we just, clergy just they just hate to ask somebody. So, okay, well, if you have any other questions, write them down and we'll come back. We'll have time at the end for some general questions and stuff. So let's go on to Reggie. As I said, Reggie is the pastor at our Elkton Missionary Church, where he's been for over 20 years. And I just have gotten to appreciate him and his ministry. And so I've asked him if he would talk to us on the subject of what happens when we don't delegate. So, because sometimes we maybe think, it doesn't make any difference if I delegate or not. Well, what happens, Reggie?
Hey, well, thank you, Bill. Appreciate the opportunity to share tonight. I'm not quite as articulate as Carlos and the 4 points and the 3 illustrations and all of that, but I do have a few, just maybe a few highlights. First of all, just in reading Exodus 18, had an idea that I think Moses was doing what he thought was right and felt like, this is how you do it. I don't know, I didn't really study to see if, did he have someone come along and say, okay, this is how you're supposed to run this organization called the Israelites. So he's only doing what he knew to do. And so I think that kind of dovetails into what Carlos said, is there's not really a clear track of how do we do this thing called delegation. And I think as a result of that, there's a number of things, and I certainly can speak personally to this, even as reading some of the things that Bill shared with me just really resonates with me. So just going kind of through those, I think one of the results of lack of dedication is that the leader gets tired. That there just comes a point, I think, where you are just exhausted, and I believe that leads into a couple of other parts to this, where what needs to get done doesn't necessarily get done well. It may get done, but not well. Because you're spinning a lot of plates, and so I think the work, in a church setting, there's almost a maintenance. You just maintain what you have, and so I feel like there could be even a stagnation of ministry, because you're at your end. You can't, somebody can't come with you or come to you with the idea of ministry, because you feel like you have to put that plate up there and start spinning that plate again, or additional plate, instead of embracing maybe a new ministry and saying, you go for it, go ahead, and you do that. So it becomes kind of a unfinished ministry, I don't want to say mediocre, but it really could feel that way. Like the energy is gone, which means that you're kind of just going through the motions. So I think that's part of that lack of delegation. I see in that as well that, and in my case, just to be, I'd say, just to be honest with you, hopefully I have been honest already, but to be frank, if it starts to get some resentment build up, where because you are doing it all and nobody can really see that you're doing it all. So you're doing things behind the scenes. People will walk in on a Sunday morning and everything is open and everything is up and everything, the snow shoveled, the coffee's on, the lights are on, the heat's up. And no one thinks about, well, who does all that? And so if there isn't that communication or even that discussion with other leaders, I think you can kind of get resentful in that. And I think that can be a result of that lack of delegation. I think it also stems from goes to the people around you that maybe see that that load on you, but have no idea what to do. And that's kind of what Carlos talked about, I think, or even Bill mentioned at the beginning. We don't ask for help because I can tear down all the chairs in the sanctuary. I can take care of all the tables in the multi-purpose room. I can vacuum the floors. I can do all that. But there are people that are just waiting to help. So I think can be some resentment with the people around us that we're not asking for help, and maybe they don't feel like they can step in. And like Jethro here, I really appreciate, for Moses to listen to his father-in-law. My son-in-law doesn't necessarily listen to my advice, but Moses was humble enough to listen, and I think really changed the direction of the Israelites in that regard, just in working through the daily things. So maybe to listen, maybe not listening is a result of that lack of that delegation. I also feel like there's a sense of nothing really getting accomplished, and usually it results in a decline of ministry. There isn't really a stagnation; it's almost a decline of that. And I think maybe the biggest thing is, I think about this, and I've really been trying to move away from this lack of delegation and not doing it myself just in the last couple of years, is I think the biggest result of lack of delegation is not developing leaders. There's no one to take up the mantle when you leave because you've done it all. And so I've really come to grips with that in my own ministry here is, who's going to take up the mantle. So I think a real dangerous result of lack of delegation is lack of leadership. Leaders are not being developed because we're not asking them to come alongside of us so that we can mentor them. So there isn't a sense of mentoring happening because we're not asking people to do things. And sometimes it is some of those simple things that they would love to do, and it's in their wheelhouse, and it's not in ours. And so even finding those places of ministry where someone can step in, and I do think I appreciate, Carlos, you talking about the fear aspect and losing control, and the sense of they're not going to do it the way I do it. They're not going to, and it might not be as good in my mind as somebody else. But I think that's part of the danger of not delegating. And a result of that then is this ego thing that we have, that we can do it better. I've been doing this for 20 years. I know exactly what I'm supposed to do. And nobody else can do it as good as I can. Now, don't ask my wife that, because she would definitely have a different look on that. So I feel like there's some of those, to me, the biggest thing is the lack of development of leaders. So that's what I have.
Okay, thanks, Reggie. All right, let's respond with maybe some questions or other reasons. What are the results of the lack of delegation? Reggie, one of the things I'm trying to think if I picked that up from you is maybe a feeling that you were talking about the idea that leaders can become critical because, quote, nobody's helping.
Right.
I wonder, you know, when my dad said, if the pastor would only tell us what he wants us to do, I wonder if the pastor was saying, nobody in this congregation will help me.
Right. Yeah.
You anything else you want to say about that?
I think I really feel like that's really a two-way street. And it's, to me, it starts with communication with your leadership, and with the board to begin to talk about that, you know, even to, you know, I've learned a little bit along these lines is to say, okay, you know, that's a great idea. We're going to have this conference, or we're going to have this event. Who's gonna do these parts of it, and just sit back. And what I find very refreshing is that after a moment's hesitation, there are people that say, well, I can do that. You know, I could do that. So I think there is that sense of asking, and maybe even being content with the results, or even the content of, okay, there are certain aspects of this event or what we're doing that maybe doesn't need to be done. And so we're just, that part of it we're not going to do because no one stepped up to do it. And believe it or not, the event still happens, or we still have worship, or we, you know, heaven forbid, nobody makes coffee on a Sunday morning. I know that'd be traumatic. And I have my pour over coffee in my office, so I get my coffee no matter what. But so I think there has to be that communication, Bill, with the leadership, and maybe there are people in the wings that the leadership knows about that said, hey, well, I know that, you know, Nancy she would probably love to do that, but to be asked. So I think that communication really has to happen.
I like the idea of pastors or leaders divvying up, share, Sonia, for the sake of Hispanics, for sharing various aspects of ministry, where you might say, you know, Sue, would you be willing to do the coffee on Sunday morning? Now, my problem has been, I love to work. I don't mind picking up the chairs. It's kind of fun. Throwing the tables around, that's kind of fun. You know, setting them back up. But I do know, Reggie, what you were saying, that's where our kids, that's where the young adults, young youth in our church can learn to work. You know, it's interesting. Try this on a Sunday morning, okay? Would like some of you to stay after church and help us take down the chairs and move them to the side. See what response you get. Or say, after church, we need to take these chairs down. I need 5 volunteers. If you ask for 5 volunteers, you'll get it done. If you don't, you may end up doing it. But that's part of delegation. You help people become a part of the whole thing. Okay, what else? What other questions maybe do you have for Reggie? I like that leadership development thing. That's good.
This kind of ties in with both of them, but I think it goes back to the fear that Carlos talked about. I think pastors have a fear that people will think they're not doing their job. You know, if I delegate, well, that's what we pay you for. You know, that's what we have you for. No, it's not. So there's there's an education process that has to go with that. And it does start, as Reggie said, with the leaders to say, here are some areas where I need some help. The church needs some help. How are we going to do this?
Yeah. But, and I know you would agree with this, Doug. Pastors still need to see that it gets done. The job gets done.
Absolutely, sure.
But that
Sure.
he's not to do it.
That is part of our job, but
I remember
Right.
talking with a pastor one time. I asked him about his goals. He said, "I'd like to have a kids school or like an after school program." But he says, and I can't get the deacons or whomever to clean out the broom closet. I mean, what? Clean the broom closet out yourself then, if you can't get it done. Yeah. But so whether, we still are responsible.
Entonces, los pastores todavía son responsables. It was me. I don't know if Carlos unmuted me. I don't know if you can hear me.
We can, go ahead, Sonia.
Okay. I just wanted to speak a little bit, and I'm going to try to translate at the same time.
Okay.
About the point of releasing. I shared 2 weeks ago from, now I'm not going to remember, Acts 6, I believe, when the apostles were basically confronted by the disciples saying that there was some favoritism going on between the Jewish widows and the Greek widows, and who there was like favoritism being shown, but that the disciples or the apostles had to come up with a solution on how to resolve that issue that was going on between that favoritism. So I'm going to translate real quick.
Yeah, you go ahead.
Estaba, nomás solamente mencioné que hace unas semanas yo prediqué de un problema que sugirió entre el sirviendo las mesas y dándole alimento, me imagino, a las viudas griegas y a las viudas hebreas, y había como un comportamiento, un problema que estaban teniendo porque habían crecido tanto. Entonces escogieron a 7 hombres para delegar ese trabajo de servir a las mesas, porque el trabajo de los apóstoles era enseñar la palabra, instruir. Entonces, a veces lo que están mencionando ellos, concuerdo con eso, en que a veces la congregación dice, pues el pastor debe ayudar en todos los eventos, tener el control de todo lo que sucede, cuando al contrario tenemos que aprender a levantar el peso, quizás quitarle un poco del peso al pastor para que él pueda prepararse más con la palabra. The second part of what I was sharing is that in the story of the widows being attended correctly, the apostle says, it's not just for us to stop teaching the word. It's to serve tables. And like, I feel sometimes the congregation, like I think Doug said, or that sometimes the congregation wants the pastor to have his spoon in every single pot, instead of taking that and saying, we'll help you with this, or we'll run with this for you, or but I know it runs both ways. There has to be that communication, but that expectation that the pastor has to be at every event, speak at everything, it's like, sometimes it sounds awful, but it's unreasonable, I guess, of the congregation to, or there's a better word for that, but unrealistic.
Okay.
Unrealistic. So I guess that's just, I wanted to share that I agree with everything that's being said, but also it's a two-way street, that the pastor has to learn how to ask too.
Sure.
And sometimes he's going to get no, but sometimes he's going to say get yes. So just
And I
to,
think you brought out, Sonia, that pastors, I think this is
ahora
hard.
pienso que para los pastores
Oh.
es difícil. Ajá.
Permíteme, hermanos, van a tener que poner otra vez español para que escuchen. Listo.
Okay, there we go.
Ready, pastor.
It's important, pastors, that we train our congregation. You can preach from Ephesians 4, what what did Paul say that pastors need to do? And help them to see it's not that we're lazy, but that we need to lead the congregation. I think Margarito had a question. Margarito? Is somebody communicating with Margarito?
Yes.
Yeah, did you have a question, Margarito? Como?
Bill, there's a text from Martine that he wanted to share something.
Yeah,
okay.
it was
I'm sorry.
Sonia. It was Sonia that wanted to
Oh,
share.
it was Sonia.
share
Oh,
the share. Yes.
okay.
Okay. All right.
Bill, can I just make one other comment about
Yeah,
that?
go ahead. Go
Um,
ahead, Richard.
in talking about the delegation, it was a few months ago that we brought in an additional staff and associate, and there was a Sunday morning. I specifically was not on the stage until I was ready to preach. I didn't do announcements. I didn't lead worship. I didn't lead the prayer. And that was the first time probably since the year pre-COVID that I hadn't been on stage on a Sunday morning except when I was on vacation. And it felt great, but it felt weird because
Sure.
I did feel like I should be doing something, and I did. I preached, but you know, it's one of those opportunities where to see that, wow, it really can happen without me manipulating and orchestrating everything. So it was really, it was eye-opening for me, and people even commented on that they appreciated the fact that it wasn't the Reggie show.
Okay, Doug Collins, Doug Connolly, probably the most prolific author in the missionary church,
Probably.
has 30 to 40 books out there, Bible studies, writes for a number of the presses that you read about, and pastored in Sterling Heights, and also at Davison, and most recently at the Evergreen Church here in Lowell. So I've asked Doug to talk about, because you see this in this Exodus 18. Well, I thought that was my job. I didn't think I could delegate that. And I think we struggle with that, pastors. So Doug, talk to us about what we can and cannot delegate.
Well, the discussion we have been having actually merges into what a lot of what I want to say. And that is about 10 years into my ministry, I adopted a new life verse. It was really a ministry verse, but it is the words of John the Baptist in John 1:19, where he says, "I am not the Christ." And that became kind of my go-to verse for many years. And I still pull it out every now and then. I am not the Christ. Do I want Christ as the unseen participant in every meeting in our church? Yes, I do. But I'm not the Christ. Do I want Christ in every Bible study and youth meeting and kids program in our church? Yes, I do. But I'm not the Christ. And I slowly began to delegate more and more responsibility to other people. Now, I'm not great at it, okay? I have a hard time saying no, but I keep in mind, I am not the Christ. I'm not Jesus. We built a new building in 3 of the churches I pastored. We built a new building. And each of the times I told the board I was not going to be on the building committee. Now, I thought a couple of them were going to have a heart attack, that I wasn't going to be on the building committee. But I said, I trust you. I'll be available to you for whatever you want to do. I'll give you my insight if that's what you need on certain things. But you guys are going to build the building. And it happened without me. It's like Reggie. Church went without me. And I think it was a matter of trusting that group of individuals to do what pleases Christ. I got a little criticism for it, oh, Pastor, why aren't you on the building committee? But I determined to focus on what God called me to do, not what other people wanted me to do. So what can we delegate? Well, I don't know if I can tell you, but here's something I do pretty regularly. Go to a coffee shop or a room in the church where you won't be disturbed, if that's possible, or go somewhere where you're a cabin where you're away from people, and write down everything you do as a pastor. It may take you a while to do that, because some things will come to your mind as you think about it. But just write them down. I mean, if you unlock the doors on Sunday morning, write that down. If you run the bulletin and fold the bulletin, write that down. If you play the guitar and lead worship, write all that down. And then once you have that list, pick out 3 things, just 3 things that you can find other people to do, and work on it. Talk to them, talk to someone, even write some names down, and try to get those 3 things off your list. It's not easy, but just work on those 3 things. There's no secret formula or anything like that, but take a realistic look at what you do, and start taking some things off. If a new expectation arises, Pastor, we have this great ministry we think we ought to have, and we're counting on you to do it, is the implication. I will say to people, we're not going to start a new ministry until God raises up leadership for that ministry. Now, sometimes that new idea dies right there. Sometimes those people who had that say, well, we could do this. In one church, a group of 2 couples came to me and they said, we have a lot of single adults, post-college adults, and we would like to have a ministry to those. We'd like our church to have a ministry to those adults. I said, that is a fantastic idea. I said, but I can't do it. I said, you pray with me that God raises up leadership for that kind of ministry. Well, they prayed, and God put that burden on their hearts. And those 2 couples built a ministry. They had 60 or 70 single adults, older single adults. Many of them didn't even go to our church, but they came from other churches because their church didn't have anything like this. And that ministry flourished. But I wasn't doing it. Now, I would go once in a while. I would encourage them. Oh, I think that's a great thing to do with the people who volunteer and that you delegate responsibility to. Give them praise, not overdo it, but let the congregation know. Listen, we appreciate the fact that Joe was here this morning and had all the snow shoveled off the walks before any of us arrived. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Paul, the Apostle Paul, was a great appreciator. And I think that lets people know, oh, not only can I volunteer and be used, but somebody notices that I do that, and give them some praise for doing that. Talk to your board. We already mentioned this. If you're stressed out, if your wife and family are neglected, you're doing too much. And cross off, start getting some things off of that list. Some things I found out, some things I can cross off, nobody even notices that they're not done anymore. And if they do, then you say, well, you know what? I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it anymore. And if you'd like to do it, I'd be happy to have you do it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it just dies. So if it dies, it dies. Work on those 3 things, then pick 3 more. I guess those are the things we can delegate. Now, work. I also, when I look at that list, I also look for things that I don't like to do. That may sound a little selfish, but and if you don't like to go to board meetings, I'm sorry, you probably can't cross that off the list. What is going on here? So you just have to say, I don't like to do this. And if you can, get it off your list. I've done that several times, and not always does it work, but sometimes it does. Now, what can't we delegate? And that's probably more important than what we can. To me, it's a matter of identifying the key elements of your calling as a pastor. What are the things that you alone can do? I would think sermon preparation, preaching should be on that list. Now, don't be a lazy pastor. I'm really shocked sometimes at how often some of our pastors are out of their pulpits, or they have a missionary speak, which is fine. This guy's not going to give up. They have a missionary speak. They have a ministry leader speak, which is fine, but don't give up your pulpit. Guard your pulpit. So, but you need time to do that, to prepare, to preach, to pray, so that that's ready to go. Key leadership roles are part of your calling. Leading the board meeting, if that's the way it is in your church. Directing the ministry of the church, that's part of that. You can't delegate that to somebody else. Calling on people in crucial situations. If there's a death, if there's a serious sickness, if there's a serious surgery, we as pastors want to be there. We should be there. We are shepherds of the flock. So those things are part of, those elements are part of the essential nature of your calling as a pastor. Running and folding the bulletins is not one of the essentials. Now, I've done it. Reggie, Bill, we all talked about it. I mean, sometimes you're the one setting up the tables or helping setting up the tables or the chairs or whatever. We have to step up sometimes. But if it's all the time and you are the one doing it all the time, then you need to get that off your list and find some people, pray about it, ask God to lead you to some people who will do it well, who will do it reliably. And maybe, Bill, to just kind of go into the discussion part, maybe other key elements of your calling. What is it that you men and women feel like you cannot delegate to someone else, that you are the one responsible to do?
Yeah, that's good, Doug. Do you think, I've tried to put myself in Moses' spot.
Right.
Do you think the mental shift from what he thought he was supposed to do to what Jethro suggested he do, was that maybe one of the biggest shifts for him?
I think it was a liberating shift to
What was
say,
it?
wow, I don't have to do all that I've been doing.
Yeah.
I can actually trust other people, trust the Spirit of God in other people to do what I was doing. And it goes back, I mean, it goes kind of back to what Carlos said. You know, we don't want to lose control. We don't want to be thought of as, oh my goodness, you know, Pastor Doug, he's so wonderful. He does everything. And he's just here from morning till night, 7 days a week, and never takes a day off. And isn't he a great pastor? No, he's not. He's
That's
killing
what-
himself.
That's what Jethro said to Moses.
Yeah.
I still think that's, you know, I just still think that's really a biggie, whatever the head will allow. You know, sometimes he talked about folding the bulletins. Sometimes we do that stuff because it's easy,
Right.
but we're paying a really high price secretary.
Right. Setting up the tables is easy. I mean,
Yes.
you know, it's kind of, and you feel like you're doing something, you know,
Yeah.
you look and something is accomplished.
Yep.
But you're right.
Church is paying a high price for that.
Yes, we are.
Okay, what are the questions? You could probably, you know, if you go ahead and speak it if you can, or you can write on the chat room down below.
I mean, I'd like to know what some of the other ministry leaders and pastors think are essential elements of their ministry. What can't they delegate to other people?
Yeah.
Would you think that would be a legitimate question to ask your leadership as
Oh,
position of authority?
absolutely. I think it would be good for them, for you to say to them, what is the most important part of my ministry? What are the things that you want me to do well and that God has called me here to do? I almost brought, I got a job description from a church up in the UP, and I'm not trying to judge the church or anything, but their job description was about 1.5 pages long of duties for the pastor. I mean, he had to participate in the wood gathering project in the fall to gather enough wood for the wood burning stove in the church and the parsonage. I mean, okay, I understand all that, but it was unbelievable. I read through that. I thought, you have got to be, you know, a church actually wrote this down to put out there for the public to read. I couldn't believe it. But I think if we did it, ourselves would be, I think if you write down just the stuff you do, you'll be amazed how much stuff there is on that list.
Yeah. They told me when I moved here that I had to learn how to drive a beet truck for sugar beets. So I never did, but they hounded me for the first beet season, sugar beet season. They said, you need to drive a semi, Rich. That's part of your responsibility.
Yeah, that's part of your salary.
That's right.
One of the things that I got to a point where I was really getting burnout, to be honest with you. And I pled with the board. It wasn't hard. They didn't fight me at all, to bring in a consultant to work with me. And the hard thing was, he said, well, why are you doing that? Well, that's my job. You mean I could delegate that?
Hmm.
And we came out of that day-long session, and our whole office was restructured. And it was one of the most liberating. I tell people, it probably saved me for ministry. When I learned through my head, okay, Bill, you can let that go. And exactly what you were saying, Doug, you have to force yourself to say, okay, what can only I do?
And do it well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions here? I want to wrap up with a little bit on some things that we need to know about delegation. Well, let me go ahead and wrap up here a little bit, and then we'll have time at the end. So what are some keys to proper delegation? One, do your best to make sure the other person understands what you want them to do. Nothing worse than ambiguity, unclear things that are unclear when it comes. You might even ask, Joe, look, do you understand what I'm asking us to do? And I often write back when I have meetings with people. I will write what I call a MOM, a memorandum of understanding. This says, here's what I understood from our meeting. Do you understand the same thing? Secondly, make sure you're using the same terms. This really kind of goes along with number one. When I first went to Port Huron, one of the young men in the church wanted to know if he could come over and mow our yard. And I was glad to give him a little money. And so I said, sure, yeah, come on over after dinner and mow the yard. And so he didn't come, and he didn't come, and he didn't come. And so I thought, well, that's a teenager. So I went ahead and mowed it. So after supper, he came over.
Huh.
Where I grew up, dinner was lunch and supper was supper. So we weren't using the same terms. And so, and sometimes we make assumptions that aren't accurate. I encourage people to write things out where possible. If you're creating a new job, maybe put it into a brief job description. You can get these little 1 pages, half-page thing, so that somebody knows, what their assignment is and to whom they report. And these things are pretty basic. I tell you, the one thing it does for me is it clarifies in my mind what I want that person to do. Sometimes we don't delegate because we don't know what we're delegating. And then I think it's important to make sure people know who they report to. I was talking with a pastor just the other day who was in a secular job, and he was telling me, Bill, this person says they're my boss, and this person says they're my boss. I don't know who to report to. And so I think sometimes even in the church that can even be a little more frustrating. And Carlos, you brought up afraid that we might lose control, which is true. And so I think, how do we avoid that? I think we can, one of the things that it may be one of the hardest things that pastors do, and that is to check up or follow up with jobs that need to get done. You don't like to check up on people, but it's critical that we know whether or not this job is getting done. So I think you can let people know, I'll just check up with you in a week and see how it's going. It doesn't have to be real formal. It can be walking down the hallway at the church and say, hey, how's a caterer come? Oh, I'm so glad you mentioned that. I forgot all about that. But just those little subtle things that let you know that this thing is on task and it's going to get done. You might want to explain to people what decisions they can and cannot make, or what the scope of their assignment is. Sometimes if you say, yeah, you can decorate the classroom for Christmas. Some people just want to take over. They're going to take over everybody's place, and then they start stepping on toes. And so if you have somebody like that, you need to clarify Okay, you're certainly welcome to decorate however you want this section of the room. So I think you can provide some clarity there. Let me just say about delegation. Carlos mentioned fear, and I think that he's just right on. But we need to remember, as a leader, we need to feel comfortable to work with gifted people. Our job is to get the job done. Our job is not to do it all. And if you want to get it done and get it done well, you need to seek out gifted leadership to help you. So what if they know more than you know in a certain area? That's not the big deal. The big deal is, are we getting this job done? And let's get it done with the best people possible. And they're not looking to take over your job. At least most of them aren't. They're not looking to take over your job. They just want to know how to fit in. And my wife and I, we just are convinced that people want to work. Can you imagine? And this is not putting down anybody's job. But can you imagine putting on fenders at Ford for 250 days a year, when you have an opportunity to come into the church and feel like you're involved in temple work and godly work, and you're helping to forward the kingdom? I'll tell you what, our people jump at that opportunity. I just believe that. All right, I've talked enough. Now, what are some other questions you may have or comments you want to make? Maybe some things you learned about delegation.
You have to be willing to share the glory too.
Yep, absolutely.
If you want all the glory, then those gifted people are a threat to you.
Sure, absolutely.
And if you're, Jesus gets the glory, and hopefully from them and from you, but if you're threatened by that, it's not going to be good.
Yeah. David, were you going to comment? It looked like you were leaning in, and
I was just going to comment and just I'd follow up. I can't remember who said it, but if people bring up ideas of a new ministry or a way of doing things, definitely that's always my key to say, oh, are you passionate about that? And are you willing to take it on? Because, we don't have the other people to take it on at this time. That's usually a key indicator a lot of times that maybe they do have a passion for whatever that new ministry or element of a ministry, because then if they don't have it, then most likely it's probably not going to happen.
Okay. I think another key in delegating is do it in bite sizes that they can handle. Don't give them a major job when all they can do is a little piece right now. Give them the piece that they can do and help them to feel good about themselves and about the ministry. Anybody else? Any presenter, Carlos, do you have anything else you want to add when we wrap up, before we wrap up here?
I was reading in the Exodus 18 that we mainly come up with the idea of delegation, of the team of delegation, that in the end says that Moses listened to his father-in-law, right? He listened to him and he took all the advices and he did how he was told, and it was successful in everything that he did. So I think we need to recognize first all why we don't delegate, and then what is the lack of delegation, just how we did it today, and what we can and what we cannot, and all those practicals lists that Pastor Doug was mentioned, that I write down here, that I was thinking, and at least what I was doing, and I almost got 2 pages. Right? But recognizing all of these, it will make us delegate even more and be successful in everything that we do. And this can be applied in our families at home. This can be applied in our ministries at church. This can be applied everywhere we go.
Yeah.
So
good. Anyone else?
Bill, I would just comment that when Carlos was talking about Moses and Jethro, that maybe a challenge for us is to seek out godly counsel as we consider this. That so there might be blind spots that we don't see that someone else could see. So not to be fearful of looking for people in our church that are wise, that maybe are just in the wings, not really feeling like it's their place to give us advice on this area of delegation, but to welcome that when it comes and really seek that wisdom.
And I think many of your boards might be willing to allow you to bring in a consultant to help you also. If you don't have anybody within your church, maybe somebody to come in and sit down with you. And, you know, boy, that saved me from ministry. I know that. Changed my life. Doug, anything you want to add before we go? You're muted. You say you're done?
I'm good.
Oh, okay.
But Sonia is holding up a book here. I don't know if she was the self-aware leader.
Okay.
Terry Linhart, that's a Bethel guy, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Thank you. Thank you, Sonia. We had him at our district network conference in November, speaking on that subject. And he gave a number of those books away. You're muted. Oh, you're translating. Okay. All right. Well, let me just say thank you, Sonia. Translate this just like I give it. We really appreciate you and your work in translation. It is not an easy job to hear it in one language and put it out in another. But thank you for doing that. We really appreciate that. Thank you, Reggie. Thank you, Doug, for coming in as guests tonight. Thank you, Carlos, for engineering and also for sharing on that subject. And thanks to all of you for being here, being a part of this. It's just to me, it's been a really enjoyable and helpful subject to talk about. And just go back and study Exodus 18 again and ask God to help you to work through the stuff in your head that and how you can do it more effectively. Somebody accused and said, you know, well, Bill, the Bible says we're to be a servant leader. I said, yeah. Pastors, you serve best when you lead. And that doesn't mean digging ditches necessarily. It's not that you're not willing to dig ditches, but you're the servant leader when you lead the congregation. And that means delegating to others. All right. Thank you so much for all of you for coming. God bless you. And thank you, Hispanics, for being a part of our network and being a part of this tonight. Thank you so much. Thanks, Sonia.